Hello, I hope this is live. If anybody does tune in and there are any sound issues or anything, let me know because I am trying out a new microphone at the moment. How is it March already? In the UK, we have literally just come out of a complete lockdown since just before Christmas. So we've also had a mini heat wave, which has been amazing. I hope you, your families, wherever you are in the world, you're all doing well. I'm going to dive straight in. I have chosen 3 of the main questions that I've received this month. And those are questions that have come in via comments, but they're also questions that people have emailed me direct. And in case you want my contact details, you can get them via my website, and the details of that are in the description of each of my YouTube videos. So I'm going to go through those 3 main questions and talk about them in a bit more detail. And then also I have a question for you as well at the end. So the main question that I've had in terms of comments on videos have come via the video where I talk about how to maintain eyeline with the camera lens when you are presenting online, which is tricky. So do take a look at that video. There are different things that you can do, but ultimately, if you follow the tips in that video and then you practice doing them, that will make the biggest difference. And it is something that eventually just comes natural. So the more you do it, the more aware of it you are initially, the more you just do it naturally. Eventually, you just totally assume that the audience is on the other end of that lens. Therefore, I have to look directly at it. But the main question has been, what about using prompt? Now, prompt, we call it auto cue in the UK, is basically where you have the script and you can see it and you can read it. And that script typically sits in front of the camera lens. So I just want to talk about that a little bit so that you have an idea of how that should work and the options that you have to try and replicate that yourself. So auto cue or prompt works very well for live television. It always works if you have a script. So that's really what it relies on, having a script. People have asked me about what I think about using bullet points, and I will get to that. But primarily what auto cue or prompt is for is scripted content. So your script goes into the auto cue machine, a piece of glass sits on the camera lens, it reflects itself. None of this matters. Basically, as a presenter, it just means that you can read your script and it looks as though you're looking directly at the camera lens because it sits in front of the camera lens. Now, if you want me to do a video about how to use auto cue, I can do that. And also the apps that I recommend, then I can do that as well. Let me know. But that's what auto cue or prompt is. Importantly, when it's used on award shows, for instance, let's say the Oscars, if it's used live television or breakfast news, all of that stuff is on auto cue. There's always an auto cue operator. Now that's an important thing to remember. Auto cue works best, prompt works best when there is a prompt auto cue operator, because it's very difficult for you as a presenter to read your content and also manage the speed of that content. So what the auto cue operator does is they follow you. They always make sure that you can see your script. That's their job. It's also their job to make any amends that you want to make to it once you've read through it a few times. But primarily, their job is to always make sure that you, the presenter, can see the text. A little tip to remember, if ever you find yourself using auto cue and you have an auto cue or prompt operator, it is their job to keep up with you and not the other way around. A lot of people, when they first start using it, get into a bit of a muddle because they'll be talking slightly faster than they would usually because they're nervous. The operator is then trying to keep up with them, so they're speeding up the text and it all just ends up in a bit of a mess. So always remember, if you are using auto cue or prompt and you have an operator, it's their job to keep up with you, not the other way around. And if you have a really good solid script and an operator, it's brilliant. It works so well. I've used it a lot. I work with presenters all the time who use it. Professionals use it all the time. It's a brilliant tool to use. And as I said, there are lots of apps and things available. The way I use it, actually, I use 2 iPads for it. But again, if you want details on that, then let me know. What a lot of people are asking and suggesting on my videos is coming up with ways in which you can do it yourself. Now, there are ways that you can do it in yourself. Mirroring, so flipping PowerPoint is one way that people do it. Again, I can make a video on that if you want me to, but there are different ways of doing it. The problem with doing it yourself is not only are you then the presenter, you are also the person who is managing the auto cue or prompt. That can be very difficult. Now, speaking from personal experience, and I've tried it many times, I find it very, very difficult to manage the speed of my prompt, my auto cue, and say it at the same time. I find I start to speed up. I forget to add inflection. It all becomes very monotone. So I don't personally like doing it. You might find you like it, but it is really something to bear in mind if you're considering finding ways to create an prompt auto cue scenario where you can see your script and present online. Personally, I would always use cue cards. I would always use cue cards because it's kind of the same thing. I think if you have auto cue and an operator and a setup that is designed for you to have a script where you're speaking directly to the camera, then an auto cue, an operator, perfect. But if you're doing something online, let's say you're a CEO or you're a manager and you're delivering a message to your audience, you're far better off rehearsing, preparing, and just using cue cards instead, because I don't really see the point in putting it on a prompt, using auto cue in that way. That said, what you may find, useful, I know a lot of people will use a PowerPoint slide to put, say, 3 bullet points up on their screen. So use PowerPoint in the same way that you would a cue card, then yeah, absolutely great. But yeah, prompt auto cue, it's a tricky one. It's also, I was considering when I was just writing my notes for this live, of talking about how you work on making sure it doesn't look like you're reading auto cue and instead you're kind of looking through the camera almost. But it's practically impossible for me to do that when I'm not using auto cue. But as I said, if you would like a video on how to use auto cue properly, or prompt if you're in the US properly, then let me know. And if you want to know what apps I recommend, then I can do that for you too. So the second question that I have received a lot of, the second topic I've received a lot of questions about, and most of these questions have come to me directly, and it tends to be when people are very nervous about an upcoming panel discussion that they have online. So I've been contacted quite a few times this month, different people in different types of panel discussions. Some, it might be just 2 panelists, others, I think there was a panel of 8 people, but whatever it was the same message. And that was, what tips have you got? Because I'm really, really nervous. Panel discussions are hard. Do not make the mistake of thinking that they're really easy, because they're not, because a lot can go wrong, and a lot can go wrong online, as we know. We've talked about this a lot. Expect things to go wrong online. It happens. But my biggest piece of advice to all of those people was, my advice to you, if you ever find yourself doing a panel discussion, is find out more information. Find out as much information as you can about the panel discussion that you've been invited to be on. And I'm talking about information like the minutiae detail. Not only who else is on the panel, but questions like, when is the technical rehearsal? If there isn't one, then insist on one, because that is the reason that most of them fail. You want to make sure there's a technical rehearsal so that not only can you see how you will be invited to speak, You can also see how the moderator is going to allow panelists to introduce one another. You can see what it will look like to you when you're online looking at yourself on screen. All of these things, you do not want to wait for that to happen live. You want to do that in advance, so insist on a technical rehearsal. If they won't give you a technical rehearsal, or maybe you're being invited to speak by a customer and it's a tricky situation because you don't want to seem too needy, although I would still insist on one, ask the organizer, the person who's invited you to be on the panel, as many questions as you can to get all of that information. Do your research as well in terms of who else is on the panel. And you can do that easily, obviously now online, but you can also get an idea of maybe what their messaging is. And ask the person who's asked you to be on the panel what kind of questions they will be asking, so you can prepare some of your questions in advance. Give yourself an idea of the kind of things you're going to be asked to speak about. Another tip is this. Sounds so simple. Answer the question. When I work with people, one of the biggest, it's most common actually, it's not the biggest mistake, it's the most common mistake that panelists make is they answer the question they've been asked, but then they overqualify it. Now, what I mean by that is they answer the question, they give a nice, short, great answer, and then they make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So they'll typically give an answer and then say, and, you know, as well as that, bigger and bigger. And that's because bigger and bigger. What you want to do on a panel discussion is, remember, it's about the audience, it's not about you, is answer the question. Answer the question, because the more concise you are with your answer, the more questions the panel will get, the more benefit the audience will get out of it. So that's another tip if you're on a panel, to just answer the question. And importantly, one of my main questions, if you're asked to be on a panel within your company, because what tends to happen a lot is comms teams or company, you know, whoever, HR, whatever it is in a business, will ask a group of people to get together within that company. Do you want to be on this panel? My big question is, well, who is managing this? Who is the host? Who is going to facilitate the questions? A bit like the whole conversation we just had about autocue, it's really, really hard to manage questions coming in online when you are a panelist. It's really difficult to be that panelist and be the host. I would always get somebody else to do that. So just ask a colleague to do it. Ask people to email that colleague their questions, or ask that colleague to keep an eye on the chat and to facilitate, hand out the questions to the panelists. That's much, much slicker than trying to do it yourself. And again, the more I talk about it, I could do a video on this actually. It would probably be better than just answering this question on here. But the other thing to remember when it comes to a panel discussion is to keep to time. Panel discussions, Q&A discussions, they always run over. So find out how much time has been allocated to the panel, find out how many people are on the panel. That will give you an idea of how short you need to make your answers, and make sure you stick to time. Audiences forgive lots of things, lots and lots of things. Audiences do not turn up wanting anyone to fail. It's not like that. But one thing they do not like is when a presenter runs over time. That is irritating, and quite often if you run wildly over time on a panel, that's the only thing that the audience will remember. So it's pointless use of time. The third question, and incidentally, if you have any questions when you're watching this, then just let me know in the comments and I will answer them. The third question I have got a lot this month is, where's the course that I keep on talking about? I refer to, in a couple of the videos, my recent 2 videos, I've referred to this online course in the description box. And there's actually there's an old piece of text actually in the description box. So to be completely honest, it's one of the reasons as well why I haven't been uploading for the past couple of weeks. I've been working on a script with somebody. So somebody from a company asked me to work on a script, and I just have to dedicate my time to it. Script writing I have done less of over the last year for obvious reasons, but I do find if I have to write a script, I have to just absorb myself in it. So that's what I've been doing in terms of why I haven't been here. And that's also one of the reasons that the course has been held up, because I'm doing it all myself. I'm creating the online platform myself. It has taken some time, but I'm really, really hoping that it will be ready in the next week, I want to say. I keep saying that to people when they ask. I keep saying it's a week. Hopefully it will be another week. And again, being completely honest with you, the other reason why the course wasn't quite ready is lots of people advised me to make certain marketing sales videos for it, and to create quite a silly, I have to be careful because I don't really want to throw anyone under the bus. Anyway, lots of people said that there's a way to do this well, and they all seem very successful, but sod that. I'm going to do it my own way. So I've created lots of versions. This will be my 4th version of the video that I create tomorrow. But what I want to create is something that you click on a link in my description box, and there I am just explaining to you what the course is, but in particular, giving you some actual learning in that video so that you can think, well, this is for me or this isn't for me, because public speaking is a massive topic. And I'm a thorough believer that you have to invest in a course that feels right to you, because there's lots of people selling the idea of being able to be a great public speaker, but you have to, in my course, for instance, there's like 50 odd, well, I can't even think how many videos, 50 plus videos. You need to make sure that you think you're going to like that content before you invest in it and have to sit and watch 50 videos of me talking. So I'm recreating it tomorrow without all the sales crap. I think I've got a YouTube channel. If you've clicked on the link, you've seen my videos, you've got an idea of what I'm about. I don't want to do the hard sell. It doesn't sit comfortably. And whenever I watched the footage back, I was like, oh, this is awful. It's not authentic at all. And somebody actually commented on one of my videos a while back, and it was a promo that was made that I was advised to make, and it just didn't sit well. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, I'm unsure. And one of the first was, this doesn't seem like you, it doesn't seem authentic. And I thought, no, mate, you're right. It isn't authentic, is it? And I took it down. And that's what I felt when I've looked at these other sales videos that I've tried to do. So anyway, that's all going. A new video is being made tomorrow. I will be putting some information videos on my YouTube videos, but only my YouTube videos, where I'm saying to people, look, if you want to buy my course, then, description, look in the description box, but nothing overly silly. As I said, doesn't sit comfortable. So yeah, that answer is a massive answer to the question of where is the course? It's coming. Hi, Sajid. How to know during the course of your lecture that people are enjoying it? Okay, that's a really good question. So all of that, Sajid, that's really about audience interaction to me. So if you want to know if your audience are enjoying your content, in advance of your presentation or in advance of your lecture, build in opportunity where you're going to ask the audience a question. Now, that question could be something very simple, like you're talking about part of the topic and you're saying, has anybody else felt that? Or has that ever happened to anybody else? Or does anybody agree? So something nice and rounded that a lot of people can answer, and ask for a show of hands. Just a simple show of hands. It's the easiest way to do it, just as a way of getting in some audience interaction. I think audience interaction makes a huge difference to how enjoyable, in particular, a lecture is. So one of the things that you find with a lot of lectures, and when, I went to university for 4 years, so I had a vast experience of this. Some people just talk at the audience, talk at them. I think looking up from the lectern, if there is a lectern there always was where I was at university, but looking up to the audience, looking in the audience's eyes, getting eye contact with certain people, anybody in the audience, that makes a big difference. Audience interaction, as I said, asking just open, rounded questions. You want to keep them open and rounded, Sajid, because you don't want feedback necessarily from your audience when you're lecturing that's going to throw you off course. So that's why the show of hands works. I would also really think about going into the audience. So having an opportunity, again, always pre-plan it. Don't just do it on a whim. Pre-plan when you're going to do it in your lecture, but going into the audience so you're closer to them and can actually look directly at people easier. I think that just adds to the feeling of the room, of them being part of the presentation rather than you presenting at them, which I'm not saying that you do, but some lecturers do. So I think doing things like that adds variation, and that always makes for a better audience experience. In terms of knowing if they're enjoying it by looking at them, you can often tell by their body language. And typically, so I'll just move this, but typically anybody who is sat, just not engaged at all, then yeah, probably they're not having a great time. And it's at moments like that, actually, Sajid, when somebody's like, a lot of people are sat like this, or a lot of people don't look like they're listening, or the body language, the tone, the feeling of the room isn't great. That is a great time to ask one of those rounded questions. Also, actually, another thing that I've seen work for lots of presenters is if you are met with an audience where the feeling is not great, and if you are a lecturer, then you will know this, where sometimes you just go into a room, you start a lecture and the room is flat, everyone's tired, maybe it's really hot, whatever, the mood is really low. Asking everyone to stand up and just have a stretch, or literally just stand up and sit down, and then commenting by saying, okay, I think we've just changed the energy of the room and now I'm going to get started. Again, it's just something else. It's like I talk about this in the course actually, but it's like a mini gift that you're giving the audience. You're showing them that you're thinking about them, and that is a huge thing for any audience, whether it's university or in business. If you as a speaker can show that you're thinking about them, then from an audience's point of view, it feels great, and they're much more likely to give you their full attention. So I hope that helps. The question, again, anyone has any more questions, then let me know in the comments. I actually have a question for you if you're watching this live or if you're watching this afterwards, and it's what your thoughts are on a new series that I'm actually filming tomorrow. So I'm going to film it regardless, but I'm keen to know what your thoughts are and ideas. There's lots of people who are public speaking coaches who on YouTube look at famous speeches like Obama's speech and then play them and comment on them. I would like to do something similar, but that is hopefully more beneficial for you. So what my idea is, and I'm using Barack Obama as an example, but I wasn't actually planning on doing his because so many people have. Instead of just using one presentation, I was going to use two very different presentations. So for example, a presentation where somebody is presenting to an audience on a stage, and then also that same person on a panel discussion. So one of the ones I was going to do, and I know a lot of people have done it, but Steve Jobs, who obviously very good public speaker. But what I thought would be interesting is to analyze, let's say, the first 5 minutes of the first iPhone launch, and then look at Steve Jobs on a panel discussion. Because one of the things that I teach, and one of the things that I am very passionate about is you should always deliver content with your audience in mind. You should always deliver the content your audience want. Therefore, when you're doing a stage presentation like Steve Jobs to launch the iPhone to the world and to the press, that is a very different audience to sitting at Harvard on a panel discussion. And it's quite interesting, I think, to look at the differences and to look at the things that they do that you could do. And I thought that would be helpful. I think from my point of view, if I put myself in the position of why are people looking at this channel, it's because they want to be better communicators. I think by looking at people who do it so well and looking at the tips and the tricks and the things that they do and calling them out so you're more aware of them, I think that could be really helpful. So I was going to do Steve Jobs. I was going to do Michelle Obama. I was also looking at doing people like J.K. Rowling, because she's somebody who doesn't like presenting. The lady who wrote the Harry Potter series, she hates it, gets incredibly nervous. So it's quite interesting to look at somebody like that. So yeah, I would like your thoughts on that, what you think about it, and also any ideas on people that I should look at as examples and talk about. So that's a new series. I'm going to be filming that tomorrow. I'm hoping that one of those videos, I can edit that and that will be up live tomorrow as well. So yeah, I've talked a lot. I'm glad that the answer to that question was helpful. You are more than welcome. Thank you so much for asking the question. I think that's it. I've talked for nearly half an hour. Please do let me know if you have any questions. Just put them in the comments. I always get back to people and make it one of my things to always reply to I don't always reply to everybody. Some people write nasty things. I don't reply to them. I always reply to anybody that has a question. So any questions, then just let me know. There will be another live at the end of April and some of this new exciting content coming as well, this new series that I am quite excited about. So yes, let me know your thoughts. Oh, sorry, one more question. Please help me. That's in the beginning. It takes 1 or 2 minutes to get myself to find the rhythm. Yeah, the start of a presentation, Sajid, is always the hardest part. Always the hardest part. I would say in terms of getting into that rhythm, that would be the part that I would practice the most. That first 2 to 5 minutes of a presentation is the part that you want to really nail, really practice and feel great about. Now, when I say practice, I don't just mean reading it so you think that it's in your mind. I mean standing up. Imagine you've been introduced. Excuse me, sorry. Imagine you've been introduced to speak, walking a similar length that you would walk in that lecture theatre before you get to your point where you present, and then saying your opening lines. And that is what I would do to practice. I wouldn't just, read it. I would really practice those first few minutes to the point that it feels like second nature. And I promise you that will make you feel better and it will make you get into that rhythm quicker. I would also think about slowing down as well. Slow down slightly that first part of the presentation. Often when we start to present in front of an audience, we're speaking way faster than we would normally, but we're not aware of it because we're nervous and we're thinking about other things. So when you are rehearsing, consciously practice speaking slightly slower than you normally would in those first 2 to 5 minutes. What that does is, again, it just allows a moment for that adrenaline to dissipate if you are nervous. And the other thing that you can do as well is don't feel like when you're introduced or the moment you get to the spot that you present from that you have to start speaking. You can breathe, give yourself a moment, and then start when you are ready. If you do things like that, you're much more likely to have a smoother start. If you don't do those things, you're much more likely to have a bit of a rough start where you trip up over your words, you're using lots of ums and ahs, you're getting flustered, you're getting hot, it doesn't feel great. It takes much longer to get out of that state than it does to do those things I talked about. So breathing, doing those things. You may still feel a bit uncomfortable, but it will go much quicker. So I hope that helps. Start of a presentation is always the hardest. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that the tips are helpful. Yeah, so if no one else has any more questions, I'm just so aware that I've been talking for a long time, so I don't want to bore the life out of anybody. I will leave it there unless another question comes through. As I said, let me know what your thoughts are on that new series. I am excited about doing it. I feel like it will just be something different. I want to do it differently than other people are doing it, so it maximizes just the information that I can give you, because I firmly believe that great public speakers are made. They're not born. Nobody is born great at this. You become really good at this by practice, but also by doing certain things that you wouldn't be aware of unless you saw them. And it won't ruin it, but just to give you an idea of where I got the idea of this, using a Steve Jobs presentation, but also a panel discussion, just to show how good he was at communicating with the audiences. The clip that I happened to look at, which I'll probably include in the video, was, he's asked a question by the audience, and then he takes a second to absorb that question. He says what the question was, and then he answers it. And that's a great little tip to do. So many people do that. It's what I tell people to do if ever we're doing anything live on stage, because by repeating the audience's question, it gives you a moment to think about the answer. So that's where I got the idea, just when I saw that clip. So I'm going to stop rambling and get on with filming those videos tomorrow. And I'll upload one tomorrow, hopefully. And the link to the training will appear in a week. It'll be there soon. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. And if you haven't, please do. And I look forward to chatting with you again at the end of April, which will no doubt be here before we know it. So stay safe, everybody. Stay well, and I will speak to you soon.